Hello, hello. I hope everybody's having a great night. It is absolutely frigid in Colorado. We have had insane temperatures the last couple days, and it's always so hard when we go from in Colorado, we're really known for really extreme swings in our weather. And, the joke is always, we don't like the weather in Colorado, wait 5 minutes. And we kind of experienced that. I shared at the beginning of the week, or actually at the end of last week, that my kiddo was out in the yard playing in the mud without a shirt on. And then now we've been in like 0 degrees or below temperatures the last few days. So it's really hard to find some equilibrium when that's happening. So I have my tea and I have my poncho on in my office because I'm freezing. And I'm hoping this will help warm me and very much ground me in this moment for our last day in the Building Emotional Resiliency and Postpartum, the Six Losses of Postpartum series. And over the last 2 weeks, we have really dove into this concept of a sense of loss in these 6 areas as a part of a very normal experience of postpartum. And we've really talked about what that can look like when we are in the trenches and experiencing these things that can really be unexpected and cause a lot of guilt and even some shame if we happen to be experiencing them. And my goal for this was to really normalize this experience and to also really empower you with ways in which you can help alleviate some of these um, stressors, these feelings of loss, and even in some ways be able to try to prevent some of this from happening, or at least having the tools to navigate with some compassion, some self-compassion, some grace when we are experiencing this in our postpartum timeframe. And I think one of the biggest things that I want to really um, kind of highlight is how helpful and useful it can be planning for this in your pregnancy. So that's something that I wanted to talk about as well. And I wanted to just make sure I am up and live in the group, which I'm seeing myself. So if you're here, say hey, let me know you're here. And as we're going along talking about this, I'm going to briefly recap the other 5 losses of postpartum that we can experience. And then I'll dive into this loss of control in the postpartum time frame. But if any of this is resonating with you, I want you to know that this is a safe space for you to come and share your experiences. And again, this will help us all not feel so alone, feel like we are a part of a normal experience in postpartum that isn't all rainbows and sunshine and butterflies, right? Postpartum can be a time frame where it is very rose-colored glasses portrayed, the Instagram reels, all these things, right? The blissful time. And I am here to tell you that it absolutely can be that. But when it's also chaos, to be quite honest, postpartum can be chaos. It really can. It throws us for a loop. It can be such a disruptive experience for us on so many levels. And so being able to honor that and understand that that is very normal is very empowering, because we can feel like, oh, it's not just me. Oh, there's nothing wrong with me. It's the system in which we are birthing and the support systems that we have surrounding us, and all of these things, they're so connected. So really quickly, I wanted to just introduce myself here. I am Jessie Sletton, and I am the owner and facilitator of this group. I am also a postpartum empowerment coach, and I really work with new and pregnant parents to tame the chaos of postpartum with ease so that they can really enjoy their new parenthood. That is what I do, and it's what I am passionate about. And I offer one-on-one coaching, so I did include my link in the description. So if you are looking to invite some ease and control back into your postpartum experience, please feel free to schedule a call with me. I want to be able to chat with you and talk about where are you struggling, or if you're planning for your postpartum time frame. Let's get together, because again, when we can plan for this ahead of time before we feel like we are drowning, it can really help be able to like be more present and be able to be in that state of mind where we're not depleted and we're not exhausted and all those things. And we can work together ahead of time. But of course, it is never too late to get the help that you need either. So feel free to schedule some time with me and we'll chat about where you are, where you want to be instead, and how working together we can make that happen for you. But let's briefly go over the other 5 losses that we've talked about over the last 2 weeks. So we talked about the sense of loss when it comes to our own identity. There's a huge shift that happens. The moment we go into labor, our life changes forever. And this is true no matter how many times we've had, how many babies we've had, how many experiences we've gone through with pregnancy and birth and postpartum. It is a shift that occurs within us every single time. And it could look different each time as well. But the truth of the matter is that there is a monumental shift in the way we see ourselves, in the way we see us fitting into our community around us, into the world in a bigger, larger picture. It can shift our own relationships with ourselves and with our partners if we're coupled. There's all these different shifts that happen with who we are and how we view ourselves. And they're beautiful changes. They really are. But there can be that sense of mourning that person we used to be. And I really encouraged you in the first day when we talked about this to hold space for yourself for that mourning process. So often I feel like we just have to rush through and be like, oh, I love everything about being a mom or a new parent now. That's who I am, and we just like put up this front when maybe inside we're like, I really miss being able to do X, Y, and Z. That made me feel like me, not mom me, but me, Jessie. And so really making that space for yourself to have those feelings, and then tying yourself to those pieces of you who still resonate, because you're in this process of unbecoming and becoming, right, through this whole period, and being able to tie back to those pieces that still resonate with you, that lets you feel that connection to self, is really important. And really working that into your plan for postpartum can be so helpful, because you can have the time to sit and think about what's really important to me, what makes me feel alive, what makes me feel present, what brings me joy, and being able to figure out how to incorporate that in some way in the postpartum time frame. Then we talked about this loss of voice. And really, this is the sense of postpartum is a busy time, and we just are so consumed sometimes with baby and with the whole world of our home, our 4 walls that we're living within, right? And this also touches on this loss of community and the connection to the outside world, which are also some losses. We talked about this in this series. And they're also interconnected. There's a lot of interplaying between all these losses and how they feed into one another and impact one another. So we talked, like I said, about this loss of voice and really being kind of restricted into these conversations we can have with other adults. Sometimes we can feel like we go days without speaking to someone else, other than our partner, but we're so busy and consumed with baby that we don't even really feel like we're having those adult conversations with our own partners anymore. And so we have this feeling and this sense of loss of being able to use our voice and being heard in our experiences and how we are feeling. And we also talked about there can be this sense of dismissal when we do have the opportunity to share how we're feeling and to share our experiences, and how sometimes, even though the intention might be well-meaning from those that we are sharing with, a lot of times we're met with, well, at least. So this kind of dismissive, well, I don't want to talk about the uncomfortable stuff, so let's just focus on being positive, right? When in fact, you just need that space to be held for you, to be like, yeah, this does suck. This is hard. and being able to talk about that and have that validated. So there's this loss of that can happen, which is very much connected to that loss of community, where we no longer get to interact in the same way with the community that we used to be in. We talked about a really great example of first-time parents. You might be a person in your friend group who is a first-time parent out of everyone, and no one else has gone through this experience. So you have this loss there of being able to connect in meaningful ways with your community in which you were able to do that before. That's kind of gone. Or even if you can talk to them about the experience, they just can't get it on the level that you need them to because they haven't been through that themselves, right? So there can be that loss of community there. There can be the loss of world, the connection to the world outside of that at a larger scale, and how we interact with the world around us, being able to go out and get our hair cut, to be able to go get our nails done, all these things where we're interacting with the world outside of our home. That gets kind of, we shrink. We have this feeling of shrinking. And again, we're very much centered around the home, centered around the baby, their routine, their needs. It's more difficult to go out with a newborn. Or even if you want to go out and have some of that time away to yourself, there's a lot more obstacles in the way with that, right? Especially if you are a chest feeding parent that requires baby to be attached to you 24/7, it seems like sometimes, right? So we talked about that as being an obstacle, and really feeding into this loss of world. And then we talked about the loss of time, which can be very much connected to all of this, right? We're in this postpartum time frame where we are busy. Hey, Melissa, so sorry, I just saw you were here. I'm so glad you were able to join. But we are busy. We are kind of in this repetitive rinse and repeat of feeding baby, changing baby, soothing baby, trying to get some sleep, start all over again, right? And so it can really put on this weird tunnel vision where we're like, we have no idea if it's 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. It doesn't matter if I'm changing a diaper at that time or this time, because time only matters because it used to, right? And so we get into that kind of monotonous at some point feeling. And then at the same time, juxtaposed against that, kind of on this other side, is the days are long, but the years are flying by, and we can feel like we don't have a grip onto the time. And so sometimes we're like, where did this time go? It's been flying by. Especially if we have maternity or paternity leave, right? And all of a sudden that's gone, and we're like, oh my God, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And so there's all these things that can happen with this loss of time as well. And it's all, like I said, connected to some of these other losses too. And then tonight we are talking about the loss of control. And I saved this one tonight because I feel like it's the one that kind of lays the foundation, similarly to the loss of self. But it's really this difficult shift where we know we can't control what happens with babies, right? Babies come on their own time. Things happen that we have no control over when it comes to our own birthing stories, our own healing and recovery. We have no control over baby's temperament. All of these things, right? We don't have that control. And that can feel really scary. And it can feel really even though we know that, the actual experience of that loss of control can be very overwhelming and stressful. And we don't know how to work through that, right? And so it's so important for us to be able to find ways in which we can infuse that feeling of control back into our postpartum experience. And it might seem like that's not even possible, but it really is. I want to give you that hope that it is possible to build in some of that room and space for having that control. And it can be on the most simplest and smallest scales that can have a really big impact. And one of the examples I wanted to share with you tonight that I work with my clients on sometimes, and this is really helpful in the prenatal phase 2, where we're planning ahead, is giving ourselves permission to take time for caring for ourselves in the moment. So a really great example that I always share is my firstborn did not sleep. He was allergic to sleep, and I'm pretty sure he still struggles with that a lot of times. He has sensory processing issues and other things, and that can notoriously cause sleeping problems. And so he did not sleep well. We were very sleep deprived for pretty much the entire postpartum timeframe, which impacted a lot, right? My mental health, all of these things that I've shared with you all before with my my postpartum struggles. But the thing that I remember really feeling so out of control with, one was my feeding journey, which I'm going to talk about separately. But the other thing was just the fact that he wouldn't sleep anywhere else but on top of me. I felt like I could not go pee. I felt like I couldn't get a drink of water if I was thirsty. I felt so out of control of my own bodily autonomy when it came to being able to do these things that I just felt so defeated, overwhelmed, and stressed out, and resentment started coming through. And then, of course, I felt super ashamed about that, getting angry that I couldn't just frickin' go to the bathroom because baby's crying his head off and he's exhausted because he didn't sleep and he needs to sleep on top of me, right? And so all of these things, this feeling of I have no control of the simplest of things was really hard for me. I was a first-time mom, and I truly believed that if I let my baby cry for more than 5 minutes or 5 minutes tops because I needed to use the bathroom, I was somehow damaging my baby, right? And I know that that may sound extreme, but in the moment you really feel that way. And I don't know if any of this is resonating with any of you who are listening or might listen after with the replay. But one of the greatest gifts I ever gave to myself the second time around was telling myself that if baby needed to feed, before I fed him, I was going to go to the bathroom. Even if he was crying, even if I knew he was hungry, I was going to take the 2 minutes to allow myself permission to go to the bathroom, not feel bad about it, and then be able to fully engage and be present for that feeding session. Something as simple as that can really give you back that power in the moment. So that's one of the biggest things that I wanted to share with you tonight, with how we can find those moments and those opportunities to give ourselves that power and that control back. Another really big one where a lot of folks feel like they lose their control in the postpartum time frame is with feeding. So much of the infant feeding process is something we can't control, right? Whether or not our body is able to do what we want it to do, and be able to meet our feeding goals for our babies, or whether it's juggling the other side of it and just feeling like all the baby does is want to eat. They're cluster feeding, and I have no body autonomy whatsoever. I feel like I am just a living, walking smoothie, right? And so we can get these feelings like that. And there's so much complexity that goes into these. And I've done whole other trainings and, masterminds and stuff like that, master classes around the feeding disappointment and mourning that happens a lot of times when we aren't able to do what we are able to do. But this one, I wanted to really focus on finding that sense of control when we feel like everything is so out of control with our feeding goals, our breastfeeding, our chest feeding journey. And again, something as simple as if baby is crying and and this is bottle feeding too, they need to eat, they're starving, right? They're cluster feeding. Babies who bottle feed, cluster feed too. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. They go through the same thing. So, you're just like, I just fed you 5 minutes ago, and I was going to go to the bathroom. I was going to go and eat a snack. I was going to go X, Y, and Z for myself for 5 minutes because I need that to recharge. And baby's crying again. Giving yourself that permission to take care of what you need to take care of. We're not talking about extended periods of time of neglecting baby. right? And leaving them alone in the room crying. You can still engage with your baby in that moment if you're emotionally available to. Mommy will be right there. Mommy's just getting a glass of water. Finding, like, narrating that out loud can bring a lot of comfort to that anxiety that can creep up for you, and being able to reassure yourself, but still giving yourself permission to care, to doing some of that soul cares, to doing some of that self-care that you need to do in that moment, can really be empowering and can give us that sense of control back. So those are the two examples that I wanted to talk about tonight. With it's possible to get back that control even when it doesn't seem like there's anything to be controlled. Everything is chaos. Everything is out of our reach. We don't know how to make it minute to minute. It just seems so big. It seems so much bigger than ourselves. Finding those threads that we can tug and hold on to and pull back down so that we feel like, okay, in this moment, in this piece of action, I have control. And being able to hold on to that is so important and so empowering. And this is one of the big pieces that I really work on with my clients, is really sitting down and feeling like, when do I feel like I am in control? And brainstorming around that. And then we talk about, how do you feel? How do you react when things are out of control? What are those feelings that you get? What are the physical symptoms that happen that can be kind of those red flags for you? What are your triggers? And we work through all of that and we figure out, okay, what would be helpful for you in that moment when that starts happening, to be able to feel like you are back in your body, you are present. What are some grounding techniques we can have that are easy? We're not talking about complex, crazy things. Go meditate for 20 minutes. No one freaking has time for that, right? Like, no, let's talk about real things that are helpful. So that's a lot of what we do and what I encourage everyone to sit down and think about in a good moment of time. Prenatally is ideal. If you're already postpartum, we can do this. We can figure this out in moments of quiet. And being able to do that for yourself is going to be so beneficial. And even if you feel like you don't have the time to do it, take the 5 minutes. It's so, so important. And you are worthy of that. You really are. Okay, so we recapped everything that we've covered so far. I will be doing a post where you can go back and get all the links to each of the videos so you can check that out for the replays. We talked about this loss of control tonight and really why that's so important, and some really key and simple ways to bring that control back with ease in your postpartum time frame. And I wanted to just open up an opportunity for some questions and answers. I think Melissa's might be on with me, but if no one else is on here and there are no questions live, feel free to drop those below on the video and we'll go back around and answer those in the comments. Or if you have some experiences that you want to share, I would love to hear what of the 6 losses resonated with you the most. One or all of them. For me, I know when I was looking back, especially with my first experience, I was like, all 6. They all just made me be like, oh my gosh, now I know. Like, I just feel like this makes so much more sense to me about how I was feeling and what I was going through during that time. And what's really fascinating is this is all tied to the 6 losses of trauma. These are the same exact losses that folks who walk with trauma stories experience. And I think that that is really interesting because this is important for not only folks who do walk with trauma, because all of these are amplified a lot of times with folks who are survivors of trauma, whether that's with their birthing experience or previously to their pregnancies. Trauma has a way of coming back into the room in postpartum because it is such a transformational time. And all of these losses are present for folks even who are having a normal postpartum experience. And so I think that's really interesting, and it's really kind of grounding to understand that connection. And I want to encourage you that really the biggest piece of how to navigate this time is to ensure you have the supports in place and really looking at your support systems and really looking at how you can support and empower yourself during this time is so key. And that's the biggest difference that I see between my first and my second pregnancies when I had those pieces, because I felt so out of control, so overwhelmed, so stressed out that my experience didn't match what I had envisioned of new parenthood and postpartum and the newborn phase. And I didn't know how to come back from that. And it really affected my mental health, my physical health, so many things. And so by being able to prepare for this ahead of time, understanding that it is a normal process, and then having the systems and the tools in place when these things come up, it makes a world of difference. We don't have to struggle for years postpartum. I always say pregnancy is temporary, postpartum is forever. But during that forever time frame, you don't want to be miserable. You don't want to be depleted. You don't want to be stressed out. You don't want to feel isolated and not validated in your experiences. We want to cut all of that out and we want to skip to the thriving phase, right? As quickly as possible. And I'm not here to tell you that everything's going to be rainbows and butterflies, even with a really solid support system and plans, but it's going to be so much easier for you to feel like you have that sense of control and to bring that joy and be more open for the joyful experiences of the postpartum time frame and being able to really connect presently with your family and be able to see how your relationships evolve and grow because you're not in survival mode. We can't flourish when we're surviving. That's just not going to happen, right? So I really, really encourage you, if you are struggling with that, please just book some time with me. I'd love to chat with you. I'd love to be able to support you through whatever you're experiencing. Or if you are currently pregnant, I know we have some pregnant folks in the group. I was connecting folks earlier today who are going through that. Schedule some time with me ahead of time so that we can plan for that. All right, if we have any questions, I wanted to open that up. I think, Melissa, you might still be with me. I don't know if you have any questions or any reactions to anything that we've covered, but I'd love to hear from you if you do. Otherwise, I want to give you all your night, the rest of your night back, and we will be back for free coaching Fridays. So if any of this is coming up and you just need to sit with it for a minute, I feel like that was a lot to process, Jessie. Take some time and then bring it on Friday. Bring it to the free coaching Fridays. We can kind of work through some of that. I'm here to support you, so in any capacity that looks like. So bring that on Friday and we can work through some of that. Or whatever else you're struggling with that we talk about in this group when it comes to lactation support, infant feeding in general, sleep, nutrition, all the things. Bring it on Friday and we can discuss that and you can get some coaching from me. Otherwise, I will also see you all back again on Monday because we're going to bring back the normal Milky Mondays and we're going to finish out the nursing positions series that we started this month. So, all right, everybody, I hope you have a fabulous night. I don't think I had any questions, so drop those below if you do have them or bring them on Friday, and I will see you all then. Have a fabulous day. Bye.